To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the co-destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shaikya clan, I prostrate and make offering to go for refuge. When the supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, form supremely pure, wisdom more like a golden mountain, him that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. Supreme sign, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, 3 worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, the Dharma which pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified its realization, who are devoted to the moral precept, you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions. Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. Decondition things as such. These merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara illusion, partook by waves of aging, sickness, and death. Semba Jembo Baba Chirese Wanchu Cherage Paru de Semba Zame Cheva Nila Nambar Tashin Bumbo Ngambonde Dalaya Ranshingi Tombar Nambar Tao Dene Sangi Gitu Sedan Deba Shari Nachu Semba Semba Jembo Baba Chirese Wanchu Latige Chimeso O kala la sherage baru du shimba sama cheba chobar deba de chidar la barcha de ge cheme bado chanjo semba semba jimbo baba chire se wanchu gi sedan demba share da de fula de ge cheme so shari pu rige pu mo kala la sherage baru du shimba sama cheba chobar deba de chidar la barcha barcha de pumbo ngabo de da Shige Dombara Nambara Yandambara Jesu Tao Zukombo Tomba Ni Zuso Tule Tomba Ni Shemaye Tomba Ni Legan Su Shemaye Sorbadan Düşedan Nambara Sheba Nam Tomba Sharibu Deta Juntam Tomba Ni De Sini Meba Mage Ba Makaba Shima Meba Shima Dan Shewa Shewa Meba Kawa Meba O Sharibu Deda Wena Tomba Nila Zume Sorba Me Düşe Me Düşe Nambara Sheba Mime nama me name chime lume yime lume rame shime rume rekshame shume lume ge game bane yige kame yige nambare sebe kange badu yame do mari ba seba me bane kashi sebe badu yame do teje do donga wadang kumjung go wadang lame yishime doba me ma doba yame do Shari Kumade Namena Janju Samba Nam Toba Nebe Chir Shirage Barudu Chimba Latin Jine De Simla Deba Mekin Traba Mede Chiji Lole Shindu Dene Nyangele Debe Tar Chindu Duzundu Nambar Shubi Sangye Damji Kyan Shirage Barudu Chimba Latin Lana Meba Yanda Barzobe Janju Umbar Zoba Sangye Zote Dawena Shirage Barudu Chimba riba chimbenga lana mebenga minya badanya benga donga tamje ratu shivar chibenga mizemana dembar shivar jate shiraje barudu chimbenga meba tayata kade parazanga de buddhi so sharibu janju semba semba chimbu de da shiraje barudu chimba samola zapro Tene jumde de tingi zende le shinde chanju semba semba jembo mamba jere se wanchu la leso shecha wajine leso riji hu tete shino tete shinde cheta kyuki temba shinde shiraje paru do jemba samola che para chate de sheba namcha jesu yiramo jumde de Tige che ka zene zedan demba shere da de botan chanju semba semba Ava chireze wanchu dan tamje dan dembe kor de da dan ala metan ama yedan tisa cheve jede yera de chonden de je zumba la ngambare de Thus I have heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajgriha on Vulture's Peak, together with a great assembly of monks and bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was totally absorbed in the concentration that examines all phenomena and felt profound illumination. And at the same time, the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva was engaged in the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond, analyzing the five aggregates by nature empty. Then, through the inspiration of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra spoke to the noble of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahatattva, saying, how should those of good family learn who wish to follow the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond? Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahatattva, replied to the Venerable Shariputra, saying, O Shariputra, son of God of good family wishes to follow the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond. To look at it like this, analyzing the five aggregates by nature empty. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, karmic formations, and consciousness are all empty. Therefore, Shariputra, all phenomena are empty without characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are neither impure nor free from impurity. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no karmic formation, no consciousness. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. There are no spheres in the eyes, no spheres of the mind. There are none of these all the way up to the sphere of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance, nor is there destruction of ignorance. There are none of these, all the way up to there is no old age and death, nor is there destruction of old age and death. Thus there is no suffering, no suffering, no cessation of suffering, and no path. There is no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because there is no attainment, all buddhis have school to gone beyond, and because there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. Passing utterly beyond falsity, they reach beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times, by relying on the wisdom gone beyond, fully and clearly awakened to unsurpassed, must be complete enlightened. Therefore, the mantra of the wisdom gone beyond, the mantra of great insight, the only the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra of the true of all suffering should be known to be the truth, where there is no deception. The mantra of the wisdom gone beyond is proclaimed. They are the Shariputra, this is our Bodhisattva Mahatattva to learn the profound wisdom gone beyond. And the Blessed One arose in the concentration and blazed in the below for the Bodhisattva Mahasattva thing. Very good, O son of the family. It is exactly like that. The profound wisdom which we don't try this exactly same. And then the Tathagata, when the Blessed One is dead, this is the venerable Shariputra, the noble of the whole gathering in the world of its men. God's men and to God appears there full of joy. Praise the words of the noble. So in the noble discourse, the essence of the people.
Yes, rangi töba taba goba chebala teme anji so chima penje dewa se dile ina ya ani ji dewa yoya ta tab chiku yores sedata ti bidama ta ti chidolo ne ngado ta ti chimi che sita ke chimu chade ma resmo
This Sunday morning is a Dharma instruction time. And so each and all of you who have taken time off during your weekend to visit here in order to attend an exposition of the Dharma have used your time in the most consequential way. And this is very important. When we speak of practicing the Dharma, contained in that word to practice and in the Dharma are the three: listening, contemplation, and meditation. Based upon these practices, in future lives we will know contentment, but in this life too, we will come to know contentment. And so we speak of practicing, training of the Dharma.
that's in the Uya, Samalogata, and the Pujoji Majanaman, Pujo Jetser, Senada, Povi. To forget the watch career, the water, Tapshi, the Dungipa, Melaswell, Tapshi, Sidol. And in that, we look green at us, same with some of the town, Harichina, Samalo, that Lagar, the Masonata, and the water to forget that Dungipa say, Tanonjil, Tangalu, Tengi, or yes.
Now all those who are breathing, who are moving, one and all are animated by hedonistic desire, that the hedonic force to find satisfaction and to avoid dissatisfaction, and this is common to all. The moment we breathe, begin to move, and then we're occupied with how we will clothe ourselves and our thoughts. All of these are for the purpose of securing what we wish for, satisfaction, and avoiding dissatisfaction.
Oh, yeah, that there is that you do some about that, around that. Simjin Shen, the middle of me, lose long, sure of the Namjik, share of the day. That in the David that Karish 2 rays, that Mazu Shenda Chimatuya, Mazu Chituya, Kari is. Oh, yeah, to did it. That Mazula, we say, church of the Namjik, share of you by Yidu. That Mazu to be Chiku, and then base Karish 2 rays, and it done around to Dungan. Dungan, Dungan, but Moshi Betone, and then Dungan Punk up. Oh, yeah, they all in the virtual tone, and then doing it to talk that Tapsi, and one of the statue of Namji, share of the Yenzu. That's it, we are the chat.
What sets us apart from animals, especially our inborn or biological endowment of discriminating wisdom? It's an intelligence that allows us, affords us opportunities not afforded to others. Then what do we do? What are those opportunities? We, with our native intelligence, are capable of study, and through study, familiarizing ourselves with the intrinsic nature of suffering, which informs the desire to abandon that suffering. Similarly, our native intelligence allows us to identify contentment and then apply a method for finding that contentment. This is what we who have this biological endowment of this native intelligence are able to do.
Oh, yeah, that that Millie Shimbish, and he sends to what the Zula, and the children of Namjik, shut up. You are says, I'm never Hindu, and it to me and Deva, Murtry at Shilakago Yores, to me, Murtreatan, the whole of the Odim of Murtry at Shilakago Yor, Carson for children of Namjik, Sherabioma, never in the Murtry to Mares. Says that Talena. Share Namjut and Dembe, me, Ludi Toba in that me, Ludil Tennis, there were contest to go you met, to make this say you made it, and if I make Ludin D, you dig it to your mother Shangy to you by your Mares.
Animals, the other beings in other realms, are different from human beings who are endowed this way. Human beings who are endowed with discriminating wisdom. This native intelligence. Through this native intelligence, human beings are capable of identifying the nature of suffering, identifying the nature of contentment. Without the biological endowment of their intelligence, this would be very difficult to comprehend suffering or to comprehend contentment. Those without this native intelligence are unable to do so. So now that we, as human beings, biologically endowed this way, recognize that we are in fact biologically endowed this way, then we find out how it is we might come to know contentment, how it is we may abandon suffering, and we use this body with its native intelligence to do so.
Cesarta Kodula Karchin Situgu Marastan Kundugi, Dungena, 대화진 그래. 제가 동행을 대화진 대화 인사 안에 다쌤 당원은 취사 뭔가 원기 아니 동행을 동행이 뭐 마시고 동행을 대화진 뭐 대화기 아니 니모지 그래 니모지 배운 아니 니모델을 그 다른 여자다. 공로다 미디어 그렇게 엔티즈고 내가 과자샤 아니 디네야 그 동행을 뭐 꼬라지면 맞도 아니 동행이 봐 세트야 나가디요 막 제가 디메디 아니 디세야 나가디로 다 쳐도 남지기 싫어 매도 매로만 인디 이 쳐도 남지기 싫어도 다 로비아 탑이야 표 아니 다 쳐도 로비아 쳐야지 차대요 그래서
The mistake made by animals without the native intelligence of human beings, by other beings in other realms, is to mistakenly identify dissatisfaction as satisfaction. Under the influence of avidya, ignorance, they fail to comprehend the nature of suffering. And so they continually misidentify dissatisfaction as their satisfactions. And as a result, their discontents, their sorrows increase, their mental afflictions increase. And with the increase of mental afflictions, so do habitual tendencies reinforce themselves such that cyclic existence is perpetuated for them, and there's no removal of the mental afflictions that cause that cyclic continuation. There is no path available to them for the removal of those mental afflictions and reversing that course. However, for human beings with their native intelligence, especially through the training in the Dharma, a path is available for correcting mistaken views regarding contentment and discontents.
제가 인도에서 딱 대제가 저라도 남지기 싫어도 라고야기 취했더라요. 아니 투모를 취 라베 취했더라요. 난세기 투모도 투모 많이 받는데 이게 망고예요. 그래서
Within the Dharma, for those who are biologically endowed with the intelligence to train in the Dharma, there is common practices and uncommon practices.
예. 딱 말한도 끝나 지조 나와 있는 만도 지조 시행도 지금 있나요? 아니 지도 강가 투모 강가를 보여야죠. 어디다야? 지 가시 수두로 좀 리버다. 아니 그걸로 되는 장고에도 어디라고 말한도 있다. 투모를 보여 장고에 로종디 다 취치 세제 이 나는 취치에 들어야 아니 다 랑이 되어 랑 커네지 되어 주베시도 디버맨들이 취 아니 시랑이 되어 발려다는 신이 되어 토비에 탑조를 집에서도 디버 침에 취했어.
In human societies, education is general in the sense of the education that is made available for one and all. And then there are specializations of education for those who are in narrower fields. Now here, the common umbrella of the Dharma is both the foundation vehicle, practices and trainings in the foundation vehicle, and the trainings in the Mahayana. In the foundation vehicle, practices are for one's own personal liberation, whereas in the Mahayana, practices have as their purpose the well-being of others. Both are foundation vehicle and Mahayana too. Both are common.
이제 이들 가서 투모 취해서 가는 투모 취해서다 뭐다 나도 투모 많이 배고 취 일라비아게 이제는 아니 이게 차나라 보기요 이들 아니 투모 왔어 근데 투모 많이 발라봐 투모 많이 배기다 취 이게 라바 제발라양 투모 취디 거의 자기한테 고기요 봐 내버려 보기요 이들 아니 이거 투모 왔어 어떤 대시적이 그래서
Furthermore, common Dharma that is had in common, is common because for the practices that follow from it, uncommon practices, the practices of the common Dharma remain critical to those other practices, and for this reason too, these Dharmas are common.
제가 이제 이래서 딱 하나도 무식이다. 좀 가르치는 로가 제디 아니 가르쳐 버렸으나 저디 자주고 셈니나 로고가 제가 자주고 셈니디 줄을 깨야 된다라 아는 건 러고야게 거기 차견도 뭐야 걸러고 있는 아니 장주선이 요렇게 두고 이거도 말아서 요즘 요렇게 두면 되게 차견을 더는 보고 이거 있는데 아니 걸러고 동원 주스다 장주선도 모신 들라봐야 돼 장주선도 랍사는 아니 말도 다는 가다 가겠다 가도 고사로 담마다디 아니 수수비 다 이내 알라래 그거 가네 저 내세 차고 해서
In our training, as we seek to complete it, bring it to full fruition, consummate it, it is consummated through the two forms of bodhicitta. These two bodhicittas are to develop in the mind. And in order for those to be produced in the mind, we engage in preparatory practices. These preparatory practices are for bringing together conditions that qualify one so that they are able to develop the mind of enlightenment where it hasn't yet arisen. And then when it has arisen, the mind of enlightenment, then following its arising, there are practices for the deepening and the increase in the profundity of understanding. These are based on common practices to begin with.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing. Seven, not it is she love it all. And two Maima chatty or as two Maima. And you see a long lot there, that you support the chancellor was a dealer. You see a long lover chamber, want to tomorrow the Chandu Sim, want to Lamrim Chenmo, love by the tomorrow, love we will, and what Lamrim Chenmo was love. And a love China, and it's that one. 이라기 요아도 텐설을 제라 아니라기 대부 롱스jö다바 아니 대부 냠내 지당 들어서 삼려 근데 채우도 면다 수수 되네 먼저 불러도 야를 따네 아니 뭐시 냠내라 다 추치를 따야 돼 해서
Uncommon practices in the secret Mantrayana include practices from the 4 Tantra classes. The Tantra classes are profound, extraordinarily deep. In order for those to be engaged in, one first prepares through the development of the mind of enlightenment. The development of the mind of enlightenment brought on through practice of the Great Treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. So these, the Great Treatise, the development of the mind of enlightenment, these are common practices. When these come to a fruition, after that fruition, then the experiencing of the result, the deepening of the experience, which depends upon the acuity of the disciple, of the meditator, may be evaluated, and one may engage in the uncommon practices, including these of the 4 Tantras.
member of the Lodon Chair, and it's Chizo, Sugar Lodon Chair, and the Kanosu Jamal of them 20 per long year down the China, and the Lamb Lodon Chedan, Savre Mangu, you to us. And I think around the Tumu, Lam de la Lam, Jema, that's to Lam Yamena to Gutaba, and then best Sava Sava, the Lame Yamle. And Telemat Nejo with you that in it, you the Chinese and to call those who do onward no down. And in Pagate. 다들 온도를 남기를 숙취를 장 유명히 개별을 통해 하는 수를 남을 부담이 개발되어 해서
Just as in human society and in education, doctors are educated, other specialists are educated, and following their graduation, they go out and begin to serve professionally. And there, through their professional work, their understanding deepens through application and continues to deepen. But the basis of their professional life, their occupational life, is their common education from which they have graduated and gone on to continue their work. And in the same way, one may graduate and move on into the secret Mantrayana, and based upon one's aptitude, one's native intelligence, but also based upon the strength of one's preparation in common study, then one moves through the Tantra classes, the Kriya Tantra, the Charya Tantra, and so on.
boy, that's a day you do them, but I'm not to forget target, Rami Chima, Mongo, that Nedan. 那去做做当前呢，那就说这个那些看着头我会有的，我能行，嘛个西人米老在那么的，老从三步，要不老不会有把的，老马上来讲嘞，那些要不用个没了，白天能行，马上就看到南边人吧，南人的做当的，白呀，我都要不就讲呢那，那怎么长久生你就来接来，搞来看过接餐呢？아니 랑이 그게 냠랭이 새 토구치야 되게来마요 어디도 배 찍어요 도단 찍어요 그래서
Our progression through the Great Treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment is no different from this education process in human society more generally, whereby one gains an early understanding through their early instruction, and based upon the soundness of that instruction, students are able to progress, but only insofar as they have consolidated their basic understanding that allows them to continue to specialize. So this is no different the way we proceed through the Great Treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. Without adequately moving through this preparatory practice, there will be no success in the development of the two minds of enlightenment. There will be no reaching the highest levels of practice. And this is just the same as in education generally.
뭐에 간다도 가르치면서 또 뒤에 셔바이나 간다 장주고 남을 단단 안주고 지금 원주고 남이 좀 벌어 라비아 대양 대치부 지네 라부고레스 이 개치부 맞으버지 밖에 지금 나 또가 토고든 다양한 개치부로 쓰고 있나 아니 그 개치부 차게 말해 제가 근데 이들 원주고 남릉이 도단이 양이 년내 약고 유나 아니 무엇이 남의 족주자가냐면 사고지는 족투해야 돼. 아니 자기 사상 상황 차를 어디지는 주고 여서.
So then to reiterate what I have said, the preparatory practices are critical. They are important because through them and through them alone can one in a qualified way make progress into more specialized practices. So then one must recognize the importance of the preparatory practices and carefully attend to them and engage in them. And failing to do so, when one thinks they are progressing into more specialized and more profound practices, those more specialized and more profound practices will not turn out to be more specialized or more profound. And so it is critical that the Great Treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment be engaged with seriously, so that following its serious engagement, one may plunge into the Mantrayana successfully.
yes, 이제 이거마다 나가도 원주고 차면 되겠지. 아니 남는 로베들라 아니 그 개치부 말했으면 아니 수족이 되게 좀 지겨 말고 가주 개치부 쓰느냐면 그 라멘 가주 숙치부 따와 쓰시기 제부 장주쌤이 요로 깨야 돼. 또 채워 깨야 아니 이제 깨차도서면 냐면 숙치부 요하면 차진 가가 아니 뭔도 남들이 말 말로 쳐버려 하는 노를 해서
This is to strongly dissuade you from the mistaken impression that the gradual preparatory practices presented in the Great Treatise are not important. Insofar as they are recognized as important and critical, to the same extent, one will more rapidly develop the mind of enlightenment, and one will more rapidly find deep profundity in one's practices. And so the importance of the Great Treatise and activities of the path to enlightenment with its preparatory practices.
어제도 장주쌤 줄에 깨네 아니 배다 사기 연대 또 봐도 등인생이 또 봤대 저 친구들도 깨발라야 원주게 한번 그 매배고는 라프야 합시 되게 되라는 걸 말았나 제부 배 롱치무지야도 요금이 놓았어 어디 나시지 빼놨어 사샤바는 사탕부터도 돈이 무슨 또 당고도 사탕부터 사탕부터도 아니 같이도는 산지기 시간 야 투지도 저거 필요해 땡기지 이것도 그렇고 산이버도 똥을 필요한 이것도 그렇고 어디서 지금 토토에 이것도 뭐는 그게 원로게 아니 로바 람 고마 주들 라베 말라나 람 고마도 예대도 토부 바로 왔으니까 토부이 토비야 된다 람 오마 것도 예버 해치고 라고야 어디다 대나 신신다 단단 알아줘야 아니 원도 쳐봤던 원도다 양내서라 뒤다 뒤셔면 가서 라투나 아니 람 줄게 묘하다 또 채워다 또 가마로 들이 연구 열해서
For the mind of enlightenment to arise, for the qualities, the various qualities of the various bodhisattva bhumis and their samadhis to be realized, requires first the sensitive conception of their possibility, the visualization following from their possibility. Without that visualization, without that imagination, without that conception, without these conceptions involved in preparatory practices, the visualization and the rest, there will be no actual progress to the point where one achieves the first bodhisattva bhumi. But when one does achieve the first bodhisattva bhumi, and one does so with the first penetrating insight into emptiness, then upon that first bodhisattva bhumi, one has gained the ability to make simultaneously in a single moment offerings to 100 Buddha fields. And this is through the force of the samadhi accomplished by achieving the first bodhisattva bhumi. And then achieving the second bodhisattva bhumi, the samadhi sufficient to simultaneously at a single moment make offerings to 1,000 Buddha fields is achieved, and so on. And the progression is from lower grounds of accomplishment upward. Without treading these lower grounds, there is no gaining higher grounds in the bodhisattva bhumis. So the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, engaged in preparatory practices, must be recognized as critical so that one doesn't squander, lose, or disregard what is critical for spiritual progress.
일단 이제 강학수가 한다 되게 된다 뭐는 시시에 되게 되게 소자로 있는데 뭐도 나면 냐면 치고 살다 단단하도 무식이 남냐면 제대 장주선은 냐면 제 장주선 줄라 제버 제발로 아니 저 뭐도 저의 추주 냐면 고요 다 저의 추주 냐면 나네다 저의 추 당고이와 소바시가 나와도 나와도 쳐봐다 양아 중기 냐면 가서 다는 내가 지시 버스가 되게 양아 중기 원래는 초사야 대양 아니 그 니만 장전 받아 제만 지속을 아니 지도 예도 지긴 상황들을 많이 봐 니만 주주가 마찬가지네 아니 지구의 뭐 아니 공간은 이게 시기 요소로서
In the Great Treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, the actual practice is bodhicitta. For the development of bodhicitta, preliminary rites are engaged in. And we have studied the first, second, third, fourth, and find ourselves studying the fifth, which involves making offerings, including the 7-branch offering. And the making of offerings is for the purpose of accumulating the collections. And these practices, the 7-branch practice, is to be done each day. It isn't worth delaying this. It won't do to say, later on I'll do it, tomorrow I'll do it. This accumulative practice should begin and be continuous beginning now.
뭐야 세상 이제 세상 답변은 한번 쳐봐야겠다. 야라 되고는 한번 다 차차버려. 내내 쳐봐야. 어떤 차차버려. 쳐봐 그리나야 뭐 답변 간단해. 뒤 들으는 거 보통은 치고 여러분도 딱 제일 치죠 그랬잖아. 아니 대개만 버렸어. 레포트 간다 그쪽이 단단해 지금부터 게임이 아니 예바지 총사를 아니 그러나 다 게임 아니 치 게임만 버려. 나게 수족이 내다 치외 게임나 아니 나의 게임들이 망고이 만들어 아니 라니 남네들이 지금 말하는 파바이나 아니 제가 경청을 하사로 제가 근데 인디 아니 냠내 생인데 sanyi sen 가지는 다 비어 말 상이 슬라바이나 내가 처음 찾아서 상당 모두 지된 치만 이보들라 중국어를 영어로 그 레벨 좀 예매를 제가 예매 이도면 냠내 말고는 산이 치워들려나 나는 영천 몰라서 그래서 제가 뒤도 이만 드링이 그때 냠내 생이 다다네 드링이 고쪽에 시작이 내 친구를
What I say then is to reinforce this, the significance of practicing without delay. The 7-branch offering includes first offerings of homage and prostration, and then offerings. And these begin now. They mustn't be delayed. If there's any delay, any procrastination, then this invites all sorts of obstacles and interference to successful practice. When the moment is present, where there are no obstacles and there is no interference, yet there remain the external and internal obstacles that may well present themselves. There are countless causes of illness and death. And so that when the moment is open and these aren't present, this is the time to practice. And when people say that I'll do this tomorrow, there is no certainty that the next life may not just come before tomorrow comes for you. There's no telling whether tomorrow in this life or the next life will come first in this tomorrow we speak of. And if that were to happen, death were to come first, to come before tomorrow, then this would be a huge setback, a huge loss. And so the urgency to practice from the present.
Oh yes, ini itu dapat nyampe di posisi bagian kan leher posisi dia yore, ani leher posisi itu macam tujuh nalar nyampe cuma itu ya, jadi yores. Pernah kau tengok tu catsir nyampe siapa catsir nalar cindu nyampe sekarang cia duas, di nasi catsir nalar ibu toji nyampe sekarang cia duas, or di nasi catsir nyampe cipu nalar yang, ani nyampe catsang jadi nyampe leher dua. nasi chobalaya tili chidu nyamne chaban tu spore tu chishimba mona ani nyamne tudu tundu nyamne chiglaya chatsang tili chidu ya chaye tu yuva chatsang yuva resu.
But when practice is ongoing and continuous, its continuousness makes easy accomplishment. It makes possible a great deal in just a short time. As I have described in a single prostration, the 6 paramitas, the 4 antidote powers, and all the practices of the Dharma may be concentrated. This is so for prostration. This is so for offerings. In a short time, all involved in the Dharma may be concentrated as one continuously practices in any of the specific practices one is engaged in.
나 저쪽 지워 있나? 저쪽 너무 버스야 저기 다 쓰는 다 채. 지금에서 뭐 두개 만드시 제차나 아니고 지우지 배 지마 투야다. 아니 지금 랑이 지금 자기 마음을 두고 근데 그냥 이거 말았어. 저쪽 로 제 제가 있나? 이게 가면 냐면 제 여러 차대요. 그래서
Those of you who are also studying the way of the Bodhisattva, the Bodhicharya Avatara, know of the various forms that offerings take. Offerings of common goods, private goods, one's own body, emanated offerings. All of these are described in the way of the Bodhisattva. And all of these are profoundly constructive as an ongoing practice, following a decisive decision, decisive choice to practice. When this choice is delayed, when one is not decisive, one finds
that one will have died and be there in a new circumstance without any of the support or any of the conditions that allow for practice.
제가 대도 이두서마다 간다 거기 최백이 냐면 제주나다 쇼발로가나 다 쇼바케산 좀저 계산 이런 거면은 대시 잡아줘 있나 쇼바들 라나 예비 쇼바들 라나 매비 쇼바스 대시 잡아 라나 예비 쇼바스 만나서 타면 차산 퓨투에 여기 쇼바도 투모 쇼바도 해야 된다래 라나 매비 쇼바스기 다 지금 장주선 박사 후보로 말하는 타면 퓨 모토에 쇼바
Regarding offerings, as described before, there are ordinary offerings and unexcelled offerings, extraordinary offerings. The ordinary offerings are offerings that ordinary beings are able to make. These are common, they're common sort of offering. Unexcelled offerings are the offerings made by bodhisattvas who have achieved high levels of realization. Ordinary individuals are unable to make such offerings.
딜을 제시되고요. 라는 좀 봐. 어디에 레드 있나요? 아니 건조기 추가 표현이 추가 표현. 나 추가 표현에 또 군주님의 제시를 와 군주님의 최배 모를. 어쨌든 또 군주님의 보고요. 그래서 군주님의 정원이는 추가 차기요. 근데 이두자마다 만족의 권한도 비교고 추가 피당 근데 건조 추가 표현이 아니 군주님의 제대로 질러 도배 누가 도배지요. 대대기 누가 도배 최직 안한도야 표현이 차이인지 여가지 아니 그래서 그런 제시되게 도왔어. 나는 매일 추가 뭐 건조기 당시에 추가만 필마도 나양 대단 차통만 대단 신 누가 이거 되지 맞을 표현 없지 여래. 딜러지는 퓨투야지 여래. 지금 퓨투가 있나 안 나는 추가 퓨가 직관해서 가장 제가 보면은 시 대가 어떻게 여래서
Common offerings are offerings that we recognize as offerings of common goods and the rest. The unexcelled offerings are the sort of offerings made by Manjushri and Samantabhadra. These are offerings that qualify as offerings by virtue of their delighting the Buddhas. When an offering delights the Buddhas, it is in fact an offering. It is the punza, it is the delighting of the Buddhas. And when the Buddhas delight in an offering, then the individual making the offering receives the blessing of having delighted the Buddhas. We have this ability and potential to make such offerings, though we are unable to make offerings in the form of Manjushri and Samantabhadra, but we are able to equally participate in the result, the conferring of the blessing from the delighted Buddhas. We are able to receive this blessing and this benefit just the same as Manjushri and Samantabhadra. And so we are capable, in fact, of making the unexcelled offerings.
라기 소족이 개와라 소바데도 아니 집에 제를 뚜뚜니 피와스 어때되게 저가 시 표현 어디 시부디 가말로 아니 라나메 주바스 민기 다 저거를 라나메 주바 피와다 미와 지고 통그레스 계산 그런 것들이 yap사를 해서
The four ways in which ordinary beings may make offerings that become equivalent to unexcelled offerings of Manjushri and Samantabhadra are these four. First, comprehension of the Dharma. Second, the development of the mind of enlightenment. Third, striving at the accomplishment of the meaning of study. And fourth, the transformation of roots of virtue into offering substances. Any one of these four is sufficient for an ordinary individual to make what is equal in potential to an unexcelled offering made by a bodhisattva.
뭐 딸이 그런 뜻이 이거는 뭐가 지고 근데 장주스 빼라면도 장주선 깨워 장주선 말아도다 그냥 빼라나 또 뭐고 쉬차리다 장주선 뭐고 쉬차 장주선 왜 버게다 당선 무슨 족생다 가가도 예 당기 줄로 도발람 도발 빼람다 걔네들 여차다 이제 당 도발 장주선 도발 내리시도 무슨하게 줄로 예버 제바이나 아니 나는 내가 치워 표거든 누가 찍어랬으니 나는 장주선 거 간단히 뭐 차례 난 왕 뭐시 자위 들로 해내 이거래 들로 해내 이제 들로 나갔다 나 도바도 장주선 도바도 양양 내고 여러 그다음 그 무튼이 제바이나 아니 나는 내가 치워 표투하듯이 차워 여기 여봐 그 여봐도라는 뭐 시행도 거는 아니 도스 미과지 제바이나 아니 그런 좀 것이다 여래서 뭐
I won't repeat these again, no need to review them again. Enough to say that the mind of enlightenment, for instance, allows a person, an ordinary person, to make unexcelled offerings. And there are many here who have many times over taken the bodhisattva vows, aspirational and engaged formally, and accepted the commitments that follow from it. And each day having taken secret mantrayana initiations, engage in succession yoga, and again commit themselves again to the mantrayana vows. And as one does this continually as a sustained practice, this allows a person, gives the person the ability to make unexcelled offerings. And if one comprehends this then and does so, then the results, the beneficial results are very great.
Oh yeah,那些东本你到东本你他们今天就给审结了，往去的他们今天就给审结了。이게 좀什么东本你这些个，난 참조고什么工作참조고什么这些东本你这些个，我说东本你特别的让把마사마 이 말을 해도 삼중이 싫어요. 냠도 랑 아니 라는 셈 소리 자는 공중들이 뭐가 지리나 아니 돈이 거기 표현도 여러 제대로 하나에 비추반하는 여러 손지.
당신 나오죠? 그랬습니다.
당신 내줘 셈.
당신 나중에 있으면 당신 나중에 있으면
뭐 온는 말도 걸 로만 할게 다부터 이거 로만 할게 로만 할게도 올할게도 당신 내줘 셈게 뭐 그래서 당신 내줘 셈게 동반이 공주도 그다음에 군조 참조고 셈도 도저 공들도 도저 안디 가서 라는 셈 거기 동반이도 동반을 가지고 어디를 당신 내줘 셈
너는 로만이 있으면
로만 할게 로만 공부도 로만 할게 와 기도 당진의 요സം 주기가 진짜 동반이 되시냐고 근데 동반이 되는 고조도 같이 마셔서 삼중 시럽이 아니냐도 참바이나 아니 라나를 쳐봐 참고
And similarly, the mind, the wisdom of this emptiness in context of an initiation, all minds are the mind of emptiness of the yogin, as the moon disk and the vajra arise in the mind of every initiee, as the vajra master presides, and these are then ordinary, or rather conventional bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta, and students will have listened and learned of this and may thereafter continually reflect upon and contemplate emptiness and then apply it to experience through meditation. And this is the mind of emptiness that is the mind of all yogis in the initiation into the Mantrayana. So this too is such a practice that allows one to make unexcelled offerings.
그래서 어디다 대주 학원은 아니 수록이 그냥 매치도 봐. 아니 미과 지기 공미과를 지내를 아니 그 추가를 필요 미과를 더더가 지금 강한 미주 당부하는 퇴시하나 아니 퇴비 괜찮네. 아니 삼중시를 깨운 것은 내리는 아니 말을 추가된 데를 필요가 있나 아니 손은 빠도나 살고 와서 라면 추가 필요도 선배들이 말해서
So then with these four varieties of offerings that may be made so that they are equal to unexcelled offerings, a person may cycle through them and have an understanding of each variously, cycle through them each day, make unexcelled offerings each day, and be aware and confident that one is able to, in fact, make such unexcelled offerings.
수술을 찍게 실로그 치기 놀러 주기 로바 친구 유매라 마트가 처박비야 고급 친구 열었어. 그래서 처박비에서도 인지미지 거기 조가 친구 집에 제대로 푀는데 무슨 고비야 말. 그 이게 저를 게 제부샤바이나 처박비 제 친구 필요하다야. 저는 집에 안 처박 차기 열었어.
All of those who do not have great material resources haven't to dismay as the offerings that are made in this way through any of these four means become unexcelled offerings. So you haven't got to have abundant wealth in order to make unexcelled offerings.
뭐였어요? 다들 가서 꾼 받아 뭐 다른 맵에 치고 뭐를 제시 야야 쳐봐디 방유선 뭐 꾼도 상복에 쳐봐 그다지 일라는 꾼도 상복 쳐봐 제시 얘기도 왔어요. 근데 또 가르스나 나가 다른 아주 통대 나가디 다다가 강대와 제일과 주의 아니 나가 강와 제일과 주의 아니야 군조를 쳐봐요. 제가 타이버 나 쳐봐를 치중 충원의 체계 체계가 나가 가지고 디나싱 체계 제를 주의 필요하디 아니 고산 추정 체 빼로 체 순서로 되서 무효했어. 근데 이것도 되지 변지 말하도 지도가 연아 안에 손님 첨부로 왔어. 제가 뒤에 먼저 다 일하는 맵에 쳐봤다. 냐고 필요해 시도와 이니 먼저 다 필요마투야 다른 근데 먼저 소관 디나를 얘기해주는 니 필요마투야 자기 위험한 셈 수수기 셈백이 삼로 땅만 다시 개발만도 유튜브에 자기 잠깐 열었잖아. 이제 손님 싸게 열어서
And when an offering is made following one of these three, rather four offerings, the autonomy accumulated, the merit accumulated through those offerings surpasses what would be accumulated through the offering of great wealth by a person of great wealth. These explanations are drawn from Samantabhadra's own practices, in which space itself, all that is sensible in space itself, is filled entirely with offerings emanated without limit, there being no boundaries. And this is the style of offering of the clouds of offering of Samantabhadra. There's no one here present, gathered today, who doesn't have what is required to make such offerings. And when one does make such offerings with an awareness of these four sorts of offerings, allowing for unexcelled offerings, then one gains and gains in autonomy and merit. None of us here are unable to make such offerings, as the ability to make such offerings depends upon one's cast of thought.
계산다. 인조를 소바도 강가 로그 랑 타입 피버티 또는 치료 주변에 약속 지기 와서 아주 중요한 것이 되죠. 나 이리 나도 샘그 토는 했다. 주로 우리 야침부 필요해야지. 주변에 다 주로 치료 다 치료 오늘 송거래서
In the forms that offerings take in the Bodhicharya Avatara, the way of the Bodhisattva, the first personal belongings, personal possessions that are offering accumulate just so much autonomy for a person. The amount of autonomy and merit accumulated is surpassed by the offering of commonly held goods. That again is surpassed by the offering of one's own body, and that again is surpassed by the offering of emanated, visualized offering substances, which is surpassed again by the offering of one's roots of virtue, which especially and most of all gains for a person autonomy and merit. And this is the presentation in the Bodhicharya Avatara. The lesson is that the caste of mind is what yields the most valuable, sacred, and sublime form of offering.
The Chitu or the Chitu in the Rana Pension we are. Lenaboton Sunam Jachim Sato, the Kevin Yores, the China Yabo Yores, or this years.
Offerings are described in the Bodhicharya Avatara, the way of the Bodhisattva, in the Great Treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. And here again, there in the Great Treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, in the second preliminary rite, preparatory rite, offerings are described. And then again, we review them in the 7-branch offering, the Anuttara Puja offering. Here again, they appear offerings. So I think now, presented so many different ways, you have likely comprehended the significance of offerings, such that you would be able then to each day make such offerings. But no one else is able to force you to do that. You will have to voluntarily do that yourself. And when you do make such offerings, informed as you are now, you will find for yourself greater autonomy and merit.
Boy, that time Shabbat under the Yala, the Jewish to Nabati, Yala Duba, and immediate Chabas since it is that subject in a village or whatever. That's down on the Shabbat and Mendes need that to launch him in a lost to turn to she can be your rest for this one.
Now in the 6th, rather the 5th preparatory rite, the 7-limbed prayer appears along with the offering of the world mandala. Offerings and mandala offerings are together, but then here we find the mandala offering set aside, described on its own too.
Oh yeah, today you do some of that, Mendes and Shabbat said this. Chidan, when you some of the test Chabar model, so that told this, that Chupidan, Pierre Zetan, some of the thesis, that made out this. What the day your response.
Now between offerings and mandala world offerings, there is a slight difference that may be found. Generally, the way in which an offering is made, the material of the offering, and the thought process across these slight difference is found.
Oh yeah, that's not Yamlen do some, but Yamlen Chidan, Suzu, and the Guberto, Chidan, Suzu, Yamlen Chidan, Chabar Chiores, Panapena, and then on the Lamrim, Jag, Lamrim, Yamlim, Yulam, Kranzuya, Shabbat, Mindeg, Kurumdan, the Jatan, Testament, or Chiche. Yan Jambeshilon Nalayan, Chichuba, Medituya, to do it on Pitan, the dead in the middle of the Suzu. Lamrim Chenmo Lamrim Chenmo
In a lineage of practice, in a tradition of practice, slight differences will be described between offerings and mandala world offerings. In the tradition of the stages in the path to enlightenment, the swift path has one presentation of offerings in the mandala. Manjushri's own word, another, differing in time and material. So depending upon the lineage of practice, one will find slight differences. For instance, in the swift path, offerings are described as presented first, followed by the mandala. In Manjushri's own word, a mandala offering begins, followed by offerings, followed again by the mandala. Such differences are found between different traditions.
Oh, yeah, that more Sanskrit, and Kurgig done to Kim course labores, that Kim course is Nimbo, course to Lemba, Nimbu Lemba, so the district much.
Now, a mandala is a Sanskrit word. The Tibetan equivalent in its etymology conveys essence and deriving essence.
Oh, yes, that's Nimbu to Lemba says, that's not when they say Nimbu says to the land and put that chance for the chance to call Maho. They got a squad, Lena to the middle, and they got in it. That's all the Nimbu Lembas, Nimbu that. Chala Kala Suzuki, and that was in it, and I knew number and you Chala in the Chala tickets over the absolute numbers what the over this one.
Now, the deriving of the essence specifies that the essence is taken, the essence is gotten out of the number of associations, perhaps, with the mandala. The essence will be taken among all of these associations. The very essence, the very quiddity of the thing is taken. Just as when we have any object, there may be associations with it, but to get the thing in and of itself is of first importance.
Oh, yeah, that is that the Yada, the Legacy, that under to the Yamne Chidu Zamba, any Chi, and Zeda. Made the trouble of so the Dulayanti told Majiba Nagi things that go back in Yamne, Echawa, Chi, trouble, Kechuma, Zia, the day, any Yamesu Chicana, the Chini, we are this, the Red Inayang, any that Yamne was what to do, and thing is the combat the Kechim, Red Inayang, Chigi, that trouble the middle of Zoyang. And
In the actual instance of a practice, all of the associated substances made in the world offering are significant, but more significant is the internal development exercise of samadhi. So in such a interpretation of the world offering, the external substance is of less significance than the internal samadhi. This being so, nevertheless, in the Shastra and in the Buddha Vachana, the substances themselves which are offered are certainly significant, and just so is samadhi too significant.
Oye, pero más caso la carisma más caso más lo que pasa para ese mire tadi ani kingoda nato ani temo jawa 그래서 ani tamba lama ni burche ani 제 개침무진 송요레스 이 직세로
양이할 수 있어.
kingo르체 아니 최배 자다 민지 저들이 kingo르체 아니 매도다 temo jawas temo jawa 되더라야 아니 tamba lama ni burche 제 쪽으로 송요레스 진짜 시다 공장 뭐가 되지 않습니까?
어디 아니 디 슝디 맹디
맞추봤어.
낙추바서.
맞추봤어.
In the secret Mantrayana, the 50 verses describes the mandala world offering, the offering of flowers or offering substances, and then hands in the folded prayer conveying reverential respect for the Guru and the Buddha. These are there's a thing is in it. The tisum
말다. 인고체 매도체 temo jawa 되죠. 아니 거기다 또마다 라마니에 맞죠. 최근 조
These three are described as principal in the offerings for bringing delight and appreciation to the Buddha.
어느 페이지 신발에 뭐가 있나 좀 니네 루주 전에 시작이나 내조 원지 관계 보고와서들 저 돈도 버리다 로마라 로마라 고랑이 딱 주들래 로마라 고랑이 가르쳤으나 아니 땡이지 슈슈치고 보면 아니 보면 되죠 아니 고랑이 멘제 피해서 그 제로 갖다 멘제 피해서 제대 하고 이마지 고랑 저 돈도만 내조 관계 보고와서 고랑을 패 아니 페브리자만 코고 민제디 마비오지 헬라들 합친 유르들 너무 소과시 대대 파데 되나 아니 대사들 근데 여어도 거대 패 여어도 뭐 별로 가르치는 문제 부분에 좋았다 아니 문제 부분에 세도자만 그 좋았다 데서 그 나도 엔지스 나 땡이지 담에 슈친 보지 아니 문제 부분에 제마 제샤라 아서 아니 데스리도 많이 겨울도 막 발송해 요번에 아니 저 가르치기 위해서 그런 애다 얘기가 너무 아디샤 온 땡이지 상들에서 하는 나 땡이지 시라 상들에 이내 니마지는 문제 살수 맞춰 표를 했어 제자들이 이제 좀 지나게 땡이지 오발레 문제 표가 되지 이미 예치가 그냥 너로 스카프이 나해서
There's an account of Gomboa, student disciple of Dromtompa, and Gomboa was meditating with great focus on samadhi, concentrating on his development of samadhi, such that he, in his practice, neglected his actual offering of mandala worlds. And his guru Drompa arrived one day and noticed that Gomboa wasn't making any actual mandala offerings, that the space where he would have made them was empty and messy. And said to Gomboa, why haven't you been making these world offerings? And Gomboa replied, I've concentrated with great seriousness on samadhi, such that I've forgotten. And Dromtompa said, well, what are you saying? Atisha was perfectly absorbed in samadhi, yet always without fail, 3 times in the day, made his mandala world offerings. And in this way, rebuked Gomboa.
그게 거기에 나오는 때에는 그 가르치에서는 니네 문제 원하는 때문이지 뭐 공개 공개라 아니 문제 피해 고쪽을 했어 아니 문제 피해 고쪽을 때는 권한이 땡이지는 상 요도 총만 땡에서 총만을 세상 권한 것 때문에 문제 피해 땡이지 개처가 문제 피해 개총 지원을 너로 확보하는 아니 뱀을 개친 거 이거 찌네 아니 그런 줄 대표 그냥 제발 때는 띵이지 또 그걸 기억 아니 남자 그런 남자가 여래서
Having been rebuked this way by Droma Dumba, Gomboa began again to make mandala offerings. And as he did, by doing so, very quickly, samadhi arose in him. So it was a mistake to originally focus entirely on samadhi at the expense of the external offering of the mandala. Once the mandala, the external material substances themselves were in earnest practice, then the internal complement in samadhi arose very swiftly. And so this is an account to balance out again any exaggerated emphasis solely on the internal development of samadhi.
때는 막 그들 여러분 중에 남자가 따와니나야 제일 중에 아니 아마 오메가 따와니야 땡이 되길래 통해야 인수가가 영향을 받아서 지금 전에야 사전 제쇼스 롱때 그런 거 되죠. 근데 롱때 말할 때는 그런 또 로트 그리면 사전 치면 되다. 근데 때는 그런 오메가 따와니야 봐. 아니 거기에 땡이 되길래 통거게 남자
And so too, a similar account is to be found in Jetson Kappa's biography, in which he pursued his own comprehension of the subtle Madhyamaka, the middle way philosophy, and the development of samadhi. In order to succeed in this, he was first advised by Manjushri himself to engage in purification and accumulation practices. So Jetson Kappa set himself away for 6 years to engage in these, and engaging in these then ascertained or penetrated the profundity of the Madhyamaka view and achieved samadhi. So there too, in Jetson Kappa's life is the illustration of samadhi and practices of accumulation.
아니 문제는 말하면 내가 주로지만 제가 두겠어요. 제가 거도 있는데. 뭐 제가 치료 더 말했어. 저는 치료 같이 치료 전에 저는 스타트 글로벌스에 담바지 진이야 계셔서. 담바지로 치료를 치료하고 말하는 치료하는 것은 저랑 짐바다 진에 담바지 계셔. 네가 그냥 하나 뒤에 표지서 말이 하나 더 주고 이거도 주고는 보시면 그 하나 좀 되겠지. 또 같은 게 말했어.
Sugi Hishe La Jubre.
나로바.
Naroba Susugi
텔로바.
Telubagi Par Naroba Jubre.
비니 소리.
La.
나로바 로마노.
La.
텔로바 라마노. 로메가 라마 퓨르바.
La.
이제 정말 라메가 이제 사 피다 그런 동안 같이.
La.
줄면 그런 되겠지.
La.
또 버티 버퍼다. 안 되겠지 좀 공부하고. 세상에 제세 배차 또 버는 비pe만 보여 해서.
There are countless accounts which illustrate the significance of the Mandala world offering. Another is found in the guru-disciple relationship of Tilopa and Naropa. Naropa was Tilopa's disciple. And in the end of their exchange and instruction, Tilopa said to Naropa, find and make a mandala offering to me. And Naropa, who had no belongings at all, nothing at all to use to make a mandala offering, said that he would go out, I'll go out and collect what's necessary to make a mandala offering to you. And Tilopa said, there's nowhere for you to go out to go to find what's necessary for a mandala offering, just go find a little bit of dirt and a little bit of water and makes a little something out of mud. And Naropa went out to do that, but found he couldn't. He could find some dirt, but there was no water to moisten it with. And Tilopa said, "Go right ahead and urinate, and then use the urine as to make your mud mandala." And Naropa did this and came back and made the offering of the mandala to Tilopa. Tilopa took the urine and soil mud mandala and flung it on Naropa's face and smeared it all over Naropa's face. And with that, Naropa achieved samadhi. And so there are countless accounts illustrating the significance of the mandala in the development of samadhi.
yes, 먼저 밑에 시에가 아니 밑에 그다 아니 이기다 이 지기 드리면서 알레 대샤 저트는 지나 아니 대세 하고도 선택도 아니 최배고도 다만 대마지 냠내시하고도 수주게 오버이요 아니 지금 거기 쌤은 좀 마셔는데 얘는 아니면 저트는 진짜 쌈도 요선 그도 안들이 저 대샤 저트게 지금 제만들 모두 문제 that we did with the parent, and then we take you jet and we take it on as we are as
There's a great deal involved in the mandala offerings, so we'll have to leave what we haven't yet addressed for next week, which includes how such an offering is made. But now, in our remaining time, we can engage in our usual question and answer. I think that the Q&A is constructive, as it may be about practice itself and eliminate any doubts you might have, clarify anything that isn't sufficiently clear for you. So I think it's constructive. And then next week again, we'll return to the mandala world offering and find which substances are offered, how they're offered, and the rest.
we maintain the sugar beer, what share, 잠깐 이렇게 주무시라요. 이제 둘째만은 처음부터 아니 수수께끼 이거는 이게는 제도 두도로 키셔서 계속 피해잖아요. 같이 근데 변시고요. 그래서
It is said that an offering of a mandala world system gains for the person more merit than offerings do. So it is very significant, a very vital practice. So next week, if you have a mandala set, you might fill it with rice and come prepared to actually practice the offering, which we'll do together. So if you have any questions now, any doubts now, let's engage in our Q&A. Oh, David's standing up and raising his hand.
See me back here. In the sixth section Guru, in the section regarding the heavy tantric actions, one of them says engaging, one of the heavy tantric actions is engaging in mandala rites without a retreat. How does this differ from the various different types of mandala offerings that we get?
근데 틈적이 나절라 근데 벌써 봉보기에 여러 봉보기에 여러 근데 이게 나는 치카를 열었으나 아니 만달라 아니 보통 노르와 여러 어디
모습이요 말이 내가 아주 이제 좀 자리가 맞다. 저기 내 집이 내 집이 아니 내가 뭐 필요하다. 마을도 필요이나 아니 여기서 아빠
예버시에
예봐
러 예버시
예봐 심하다
러스 예버시
예봐 씨 어디 이제 원래는 이건 여왕 말이야 어서 다 근데 민재이 나 저같이 저가기 왕실이 민재이 예봐 풀고 여러 어디 마피는 예봐 이것이 어디
나 되래
또 왕 저거 죽으러 와 왕 저거 죽으서 말이 왕 저거 안 되는데 다들 최초에서 뭐 쏘았다고 와 그래서 왕 저거 죽으면 민재 풀고 민재 마피는 예봐시
This especially has to do with what is required in requesting an initiation. At the beginning of an initiation, first comes a request and then must come a mandala offering. When that offering is made incorrectly, or one fails to make that offering, this is the fault described there.
I understand.
디하고마송사.
그거 들어야 돼마 민재 그래서
아니 공부계로 책디 아니 만달라 아니 보단 노르와 공부 계획이 나는 책대로
뭐지나 뭐 장요 말했어 뭐 장요 말 뭐지 그런 정도 잠깐 자동 주시제 뭐지 새로와 이나는 뭐지 나는 딱 민재 왕 토발 민재 표고 이거다 민재 내고 표고 이거 저와 뭐 있나 아니 당만 바보 중요한 신나 바보 중요한 신나 나도 바보 콜 바보 레시야 말해 바보 나 이제 이 아버지 말고 있나 바보 중요한 신나 이거랬어 어디지 대시 좋아해서
this which you describe is not actually counted as one of the 8 heavy violations, as there are these 8 heavy violations and there's the 14 infractions and the rest. In the 8 heavy violations, the mandala is to be made before an initiation. It is to be performed correctly. Failing to make the offering or failing to perform it correctly is only a basis for a heavy downfall. It isn't counted as one of the heavy downfalls itself. It's a contributing factor for a heavy downfall.
I have a question in terms of the swift path order of offering. So is it that it's Madhava's offering and the 4 ways that can be done, and then the mandala offering? Is that the correct way to understand?
Also, wenn hier lang la, ich sage, Chöba Buldan Shi, and in Lana maybe in the Chöba Buya, Nuba Chapian Sankyo, Buldan, Latine, Boa Chikche, then in Digi Jesu, and the Mandala Buya, the Remshen, do, and the Rimbadira, Rimbadira. Yes. Yes, that's right. In the swift path, first the offerings and then the mandala offering. Okay. All doubts have been clearly removed.
Thank you so much, Geshe-la. I'm a little confused. So according to the Bodhisattva's ways of life, the mind offering is the yield's greatest result. And now in the 7 limbs of practice, seems like the offering of mandala with worldly things are also as important and gain a lot of merit. So my first question is that the correct understanding of mine? And the second part of my question is that when we do the offerings, if we have the substances, the external substances, then that is the best. Then when we don't have that, then we use the water bowls to represent the worldly external offerings. And then when we don't even have those, then we do the mudra and imagine that we make all of those offerings. So in this way, the external objects for offerings are more important than the third one that I mentioned is the imagination and the doing the mudra with the visualization of making the external offerings. Is that correct for me to think of it that way?
춘주가
음,
아니 죄가 만dra와 시가 요베나네 따티 너기 죄바디 소남 체와 토바 이 요리 직제 근데 아니 인라 등이 나네 만달라 부여디 내가 첨부지기 요래 딱 만다 부여디 아니 로기 트벌레 소남 체와 토리 차긴 요리에 직제 근데 지금 제 주비제 요나 주비제 노수 부나 아니 블랙 메나 팅샤 든 된속이 천전 전에 부샤는 지기 이네 찹양메나 네 아니 그래서 차기야 된 그래서 된 템백이 천전 전에 아니 주메나야 아니 주비제 가야메나야 아니 차기 된 tinidi yang tigres ra tat di chubize di nega chelu kasere chubizeran
당보다는 당보도 거기
nipudi tsam
알을 것 같아. 아, 당보디 거기 담아디 로열랑 쳐봐 숨도 쳐봐 숨다 민대기 셰바자비 민대디 오 요로 도바당 인데기 딱만 빼지만 대시대 요래 맞아 이 가든 데스 함로당하게 개발하고 사이만디 민대는 쳐봐 대시대 데스를 무여를 민대는 비지는 시하와 인스 그래서 민대 비비자마 그런 가르치 교육에 쳐봐도 그런 가르치 되게 거의 시기 좋아서 개발해서 요래 이 차에 아니 민대지 사바시 드신다 요래 아마 민대 비비도 받아는 이 저거 제 부여죠 제 창마서 개발해줘 봐서 대대기 차에 민대들이야 소 유로 좋아야 자기 시기 요래스 이 차에 아니 민대들이 저번에 이제 편치하고 대시시게 요래스 집에서 아니 어떻게 해야 이번에 이제
in the three forms of offering described in the Bodhisattva Avatar, the way of the Bodhisattva that you described, compared with mandala offering, there is an explanation in which the mandala offering is said to more rapidly bring about the completion of the accumulations. Yes. The explanation, the presentation of the mandala offering involving this
evaluation of it as lending itself to more rapid completion of the accumulation is a long one. And so I haven't gotten into it yet. I have left that for next week because it involves the role of intention in the offering practice itself and intention in the offering of the mandala too. Much depends upon the mind as it makes the offering or makes the mandala offering, and also the swiftness with which the mandala offering completes the accumulation for a person also requires completeness in the offering substances of the mandala itself. Now, so there are these moving parts of the explanation for next week for us to look at next week.
아니 다고 이버디 땡이즈도 잘 나죠. 땡이즈 제비 땡이즈 두시 들어와. 시디 제들 하마. 제들 미버 쳐볼 때는 땡이즈 두고 하마. 땡이즈 두때 다 땡이즈 좀 찾으시도 다 땡이즈 되게 뭐가를 너무 줘야게. 아니 이거부터 제불 산지 강다도 선지 되치야 지도라. 아니 찾게 시티로 시남 제부순 전대 지고를 했어. 그다음 시의 남자 제부순데 지게 맞아. 근데 요거 말와. 정말 개치고 요거 왔어. 그다음 시 땡이지 쪽에 시 무시 땡이지가 제마 선지 되지도 롱지도 아니 선지 되지 선정시로 자게 되고 그랬어. 어디들이 돌아가면 돼서
Regarding your second question, the offering substance itself, the substance itself is the basis for the exercise of the samadhi, which takes it as the object of meditation and transforms it through samadhi. It is transformed through samadhi. It is transformed too through the mudra. Now the mudra conveys symbolically the achievement of the result in the body of the Buddha that is for carrying out the well-being of sentient beings. And so you have here in the substance and samadhi and the mudra, you have the base, the ground, the path, and the result. And where these are together, there's no one being more valuable than any other, as they are complements to each other. So we cannot say that one is more important or significant than any other.
주제가 전에 개주인 거라고 봐. 너무 먼저 저 양양 방법 고수를 제 개처로 이거죠. 근데 내가 무슨 양양 가도는 땡에서 개처 이거죠. 제가 땡에서 줄래 계산은 양 자기도 개처 이거 곧 주제가 되는 데에서 아마 개처를 여기 유어를 했는데 여기로 와서
There may too be difference in the significance or the importance or relative importance of the offering substance, samadhi, and the mudra, depending upon the time. For a person early in their practice, the substance is important, more important relatively. With the development of samadhi, its relative importance lessens. With the arising of samadhi, the importance of the mudra increases. So it has to do with where a person is in their practice too.
It seems that in the NXL offering, if one is not in samadhi, that intention is primary. So rather it's developing mind and alignment, even though one has not achieved it, that intention seems to be the underlying factor. So then, that being the case, then it seems like samadhi still plays an important role, because you talked about the blooming of the first blooming of the bodhisattva. And that would be the first samadhi. So I'm just wondering for Naropa, when he did make the offering and he had to add urine to make it, and then it got smeared on his face, and at that point, samadhi occurred. Is that more like samadhi, like the first absorption state, or is it samadhi, the first blooming, or is it samadhi like Nipesho himself?
아니 라나 maybe 쳐봐 보여기 자기한 상체기 아니 탑람 문다와 시 송송아 라 되는 잡아 라나 maybe 미타마 바치기 라나 maybe 쳐봐 보여기 자기한 시요래요
자기스네가 퓨투야.
부투비 얘기 시 부투비 시 맞아 린서 팅은 top 메나양 디시 강롱와 라테네 아니 라나 maybe 쳐봐 부투바 근데 순드 잠발라 고 가를 렘바인세나 군롱디 쪼디 쪼 시가라 시게기 쪼디 아니 군롱 인사레 군롱 이kengi 아니 드레부 찬양 아니 톱투베기 유켄 쪼디 아니 군롱 아니 인사레 상송 와 직제 이마 리레베 마르베 직제 드네 심바데 아니 나로베기 쳔바단 아니 티 사디 제마전에 라 아니 만다 부네 아니 틀로베기 출 셰르라 아니 주 추바데 주야데 주네 라 주네 아니 띵에선 토바데 띵에선 토바데 아니 something 담보 토비아 당자라버베 야메나 아니 사 담보 토비아 당자버베 가르제
남들 뭐 땡이 됐어요. 땡이 좀 규진을 해서 이걸 메모한다. 이걸 땡이 남들 담보가 땡이 넌 땡이 되면 규마 투유 미규마 땡이 처리해야 돼. 그래서 아다 나로 바로 땡이 처리해. 사 담보 처리해 땡이 돼. 근데 이 표처럼 주었다 오는지 그런 상관 때문에 내가 해서 담보 이걸 된다.
So taking the first the second first the first mental absorption, the samadhi of the first mental absorption is an ordinary state of absorption, an ordinary samadhi. It isn't the one described in Naropa's achievement of samadhi. Naropa's achievement of samadhi when the urine and soil mandala was smeared on his face was the achievement of the samadhi of the first bhumi. That's the first, so keep that in mind. No.
이번 선이지 꿀몽에서 꿀몽도 거의 이발에서 꿀몽들이 다른 이지비지 그러나 전주 쌤 기념에 제발라 꿀몽은 무슨 영향이 뭐라고 말하잖아 이 꿀몽들이 다 거의 이발이 이발할 때 한다 아주 빼놨다 꿀몽들이 여러 번에 전주 쌤 송원이나 그리고 전주 쌤 깨버리나 아니 전주 쌤 깨버 편유지 가져지 요래서나 한테 이 거기에 달려 수많은 되게 뭐 표준이 미리 누가 같이 타고래 이게 되지 톱트에 누가 냐마이다 원래 나는 제가 표투가 누가 이거 세고 굉장히 좋아 얘기 콜 땡이지 코가 타이고 표 땡이지 누가 주지 다들 누가 찍고 토고 이거이나 하는 걸 나는 누가 쓰라고 그래 다들 나는 누가 쓰게 가는 사매기 와서 탑에 그 지기도나 나는 주가 쓰라고 그래 사매 대화에서 사직 대화 사매 대화로 어 사매 대화 토에 규칙이도나 나는 잡았어. 어떻게 관리하는 거였어?
Yes, intention is always and everywhere of first importance. And it is important here too in these
offerings that allow a person to make the equivalent of an unexcelled offering. When the intention to the development of the mind of enlightenment has arisen, and then it is conjoined with the actual development of the mind of enlightenment. The mind of enlightenment entails innumerable, multitudinous benefits. In their multiplicity of benefits, they equal the multiplicity that follows from the emanation of a person who has achieved samadhi, emanating offerings filling space. So the benefits that follow from the arising of the mind of enlightenment, following from the intention to develop the mind of enlightenment, the multiplicity of them is equal to the multiplicity of emanations into space by the person having achieved samadhi. And so, when this is so, the samadhi, the boundless offerings from samadhi, confer upon the person the experience of uncontaminated great bliss. So too may one experience uncontaminated great bliss by the force of the intention that informs the development of the mind of enlightenment with its innumerable benefits. Such a person is able to experience uncontaminated great bliss, wherever something is cause for the experience of uncontaminated great bliss, that is an unexcelled offering.
당장은 끝나는 맵에 처벌을 나라 저희 망고지 뜻이지 망고지 처벌생인들이 아니 그 처벌 표가 되는 대화기 사명이 줄 도투와 그 사명 tun지 여와 제도는 아니 콜라였다 한다 처벌을 그래 아니 다한다 일 잘해라 예 근데 다 최백이 나는 저도 그거 다들追逐 나는 시에 처벌도 이제 얘기하고 아니 저거 비하를 이렇게 되는데 이거 이는 또 저거 보나노 가서는 아니 니에버 쳐봐서리 수니에 보스나 아니 그다음에 개뷰티 니에버 쳐보래 개뷰티 니에버 쳐봐라 개뷰티 니에버 쳐야 개뷰티 곧 니에버 쳐야 유가스는 꼭 대화대 사명이 대회는 뭐 유튜브 대화대 사명이 대화 제 두고 이거이나 대회 줄 두고 이거이나 아니 꼭 쳐봤어.
Offerings are described in various ways, but the essence or that which characterizes a practice, which is the giving of a substance, which characterizes that practice as an offering practice, is that the substance given through the way it is given, delights the Buddhas. The measure of the offering is the delight it brings to the Buddhas. And so, in the way of the Bodhisattva, various forms of offering, various substances are described. What characterizes the offering is that it pleases the refuge and protector. The refuge and protector receiving an offering is able to transform it into great bliss. And so, insofar as an offering delights a Buddha that transforms the offering into great bliss, and that bliss is uncontaminated, in just so far is that offering an unexcelled offering.
예, 귤을 좀 많이나 아니 군주 얘기로 와. 가서다 당고 대화기 아니 왜다 그래서 유고 남다 요트가 정소나 아니 또 군주 이해 봤어. 또 군주 이야기 또 유지 또 대차별로 왔어. 그다음에 군주 이야기 믿어도 새 송사들이 아니 군주기 그런 거 배워요 가래 유지를 대동이면 대동수주고 남 규를 계속 꾸준히 와 어쨌든 네 규를 계속 중앙이 아니 주법에 고배 조 차별해서
It's no different than a friend who you'd like to please. You satisfy their wish in whatever way you can. Here, one satisfies the wish of the refuge, the sublime refuge. And that which satisfies the wish of the sublime refuge is the union of indivisible bliss emptiness. The actual entering into the unity of bliss, indivisible bliss emptiness, where something has become cause for the unification of indivisible bliss emptiness. This is cause for satisfaction and delight in the Buddha. For the Buddha receiving an offering is able to transform and bring into unity bliss and emptiness. And so the measure of an offering, that it is an offering, is that the desire of the Buddha that it become the union of bliss emptiness, bliss coming first, and then entering the union of bliss and emptiness, which is indivisible. This is the measure of the offering.
Is there an insight into emptiness? So if you're talking about the union of the two, so if you're going to have bliss from making that offering and the delight of the Buddhist, and the two are together, emptiness and bliss, that you can't separate that. So does that imply that one had insight in emptiness in the sense that Tsongkhapa, when he was reading the 18th chapter of Buddha Kalita, he saw emptiness and he had that kind of foundation of bliss coming from the offerings he made.
맞아. 대동 예르메 쓰리데 대동 예르메 케야디 케야가 저거 루틴 코란 모마네 빙이 가르사 모마네 동바니 또 사르네 근데 저거 분에 대화디 아니 똥니수 교리기 자기 여
또 처음에 보고 말다 이제 동번이 그랬지. 선도 동번이 과요 과. 동번이 집이 또 처와서는 주 토를 살와. 야면서 동번이는 과요. 주중이 싫어 과요, 선중이 싫어 과요. 내지기 또는 그리고 유리 동번이 이성의 예배는 되게 딱 이제 근데 또 예배 상담이 와. 기름 공기 강사들 저기 아니 동번이 다 먹고 오면 주다 맞다 거면 뒤에는 뭐 끼고 거면 있어 어떻게 잘 쉬어서 해서 동번이 또 찾는 이유 말아 동번이 배 맞고 동번이 다 보아요 봐 동번이 있으면 뭐 생각 즉 차랑은 예거들 있는 이게 공적으로 와
required is a conceptual familiarity with emptiness. The realization, direct realization, is not required. Direct realization is very advanced. Conceptual familiarity derives from study and contemplation, such that in the offering, the individual making the offering can comprehend conceptually that the experiencing of the object of the offering, that in that experience the object itself is empty. This conceptual understanding is sufficient. This is the conceptual understanding involved in the generation stage, where bliss emptiness is employed. The essence being bliss emptiness is employed. Of course, the experience would be had by a person who has directly realized emptiness.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the appropriate method for making the offering?
어때네 저거 부두 아니 자기 가르치나 저거 부이 자기
아니 수도 두가도 받쳐가 비니 철을 줘야 되죠. 수수 표현을 받쳐요. 아니 근데 아니 저거 수수 표현 차게 되는 자기 먼저 되게 용다라 이주로 쳐봤어. 이주로 쳐봤어. 아니 되게 알아가 봐야 근데 그것도 이주 뒤에로 어디도 본 저거 표현을
the where there's samadhi, the samadhi, by the force of the samadhi, the offerings are made. Where there's no samadhi, you can employ the mudra to convey the symbolic offering. Symbolic offerings, seven principal spiritual offerings. They're emanated from the heart center, and then each of the substances has its own mudra.
Yeah, 이제 들을 수 있어.
Maybe David will be our last question. David. David.
No.
Dale la mesa.
tenemos heredamos que 다른데 샤니 같이로 남시하고도 하는 건 스테이션 스테이션치로도 될 거라 그랬지는 그래서 아니 다 드링어도 저것도다 군주님을 집에 제게 집에 돌아 무슨 집에 겨워들 때문에 아니지 거기 랑수수게 있다 이거 아니지 또 뭐냐면 겨웠다 내가 비중에 시와도 내가 물론 걔는 지금 아니 좋다나 또 거의 앰뷸런스이 아니지 얘기 거기 내음 마주도 파시와다 아니 이제 봤으면 이제 치료 당하는 선제 탐지스가 우유에 제가 선제 가르치려 한 탐지 동행 시와 대화 토백이 이제 그러면 아니 최년바디 아니 최대의 개와디 라마도 아니 어느 배야기 유기도 아니 뭐는다 뭐하래 제가 어디 뭐지 좀 보시다 그래서 여와 추수도 만들어디 뭐하게 내가 제가 뭐지 왜 좀 보자 그래서 육 먼저 아무 볼ում 이번 무시 최초번에 내가 양수랑 그래 되지 하마데나 뭐하대 어떻게 좀 상나 아니 개와 주문 주순 상화성의 차기 어레스 지금 주문 주순 상권에 아니 개와 제발이 랍친 것이라 어레스
Now we'll have lunch and a chance to continue to talk outside after class. And now the very content of this exposition of the Buddha Dharma and our ongoing contemplation of its meaning as a virtuous constructive activity may be dedicated first to the development in our own minds of realization and temporary relief personally from all the pains we each experience. But furthermore, and most importantly, more widely, may be dedicated to the alleviation of pandemic, to the pacification of all violent conflict, and to the relief for all sentient beings from their pains and agonies and their coming to experience lasting contentment. When this is the intention, and this is the direction that our thought takes, then the constructive action and constructive activity of contemplation preserves its meaning and increases its intensity. And so this is the purpose of the dedication and the prayer. Wherever there's been a virtuous action done, let it not dissipate. One dedicates the virtue
And so we do that, and everywhere in practice, the beginning, the middle, and the end are equally critical. In the beginning, an intention; in the middle, the actual practice, whatever the practice is, and then the conclusion. Where these three are deliberate and all three are present, then the virtue of those activities is never lost. And so with this in mind, we recite our closing verse. So allow us to recite these closing verse.
Rangi Shishin Gobe Rangi Ni Shura Sewe Chave Choge Roe Yije Mamba Seje Yawe Temba Yuki Zeyu Temba Nishin Choge Majamba Jagya Yamba Girve Choge Nije Chemba Yiram Girwari Ende Tere Sawara Jeba Seje Yawe Mejo Chile Lendru Sanju Namgi Lepe Tadu Namgi Yiram Pete Yawe Zewa Rindu Kyungirviji Tazan Jube Tungen Buje Kyungin Seje Medam Nike Zera Kundu Yiwen Mapari Nanda Landa Chewa Kanze Keva Joya Chuju Suye Kula Tumpadi Ude Namje Tatu Twaje Chachi Gyalu. From my two collections, vast in space that I have amassed, from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief healing Buddha for all those whose mind blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all my lives and ministry. May I find the best of the path of the complete teaching, and may I please all the Buddhas by practice. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the mind of all beings with the points of the path as I discern them. And may I was teaching for a very long time. With my heart going out with great compassion, whatever direction for the most precious teaching, not yet spread or once spread, I've declined. May I offer this treasure of happiness and rid all from the above. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted boundless peace, and the Buddha's deed be nourished for a long time. By following the complete graduated path of enlightenment and the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas in their sons. May all human and non-human beings that eliminated make things conducive for practicing the excellent path, never be buried in any of their lives, and the purest path runs by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the sinful mind and perfect choice, may always be assisted by the mighty one. Prosperity spread everywhere. Bhagye Jinye Saven Gilwan Di Tendon Doa Kunla Kampenda Kevara Jidu Mozon Tabali Tebe Nimo Rindu Senje Sho Kare Lawe Korwe Jimon Kade Pena Dewa Malu Zumbe Teres Nilwan Tenzin Gatsuri Shabe Sikde Madu Tengurati Yabe Pawo Jidara Keba Dam Kunu Sambu Deyon Deshin Yedam Kungi Jesu Dambu Mechi Gyawa Gida Samchi Hatu Vizu Chebe Gyawa Tamchi Mawa Ragi Gyawe Sawa Dikunya Sambu Chije Hatu Mawa Senjo limpo che mange wana che Yewa nyamba meba one konde. I dedicate whatever virtues I've ever collected for the benefit of the teachings and of sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teaching of Venerable Mosan Rakwa to shine forever. In the land encircled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful sinners existing council, please remain until psychic existence is ended. So that the brave ones should be among the power, realize things as they are. Also, I dedicate all these merits in the best way, that I may follow their perfect example. I dedicate all the fruits of virtue, with the dedication praise of the best, by the victorious thus God one, and these plans, so that I may perform the good and such deeds. May the supreme jewel which is fulfilled and not arisen rising from may that which is not to manage, but by the next week. Thank you. But there's lunch outside. Let's enjoy that together outside.